Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. A while back I made a custom scenario and put it up on the Steam Workshop. I already did 2 videos on it at the time, but just to recap quickly, it's a 2 vs 6 scenario. I guess you could say reenacting the fall of the Western Roman Empire to barbarian invasion. Basically, there's a player for each half of the Roman Empire, and they have to try to keep at least one of the Western Empire's main cities standing for 90 minutes, while the other 6 players are allied barbarians trying to destroy those cities, and they win if they can take out all the major cities within a time limit. 6 vs 2 might sound impossible, and especially when it's really 6 vs 1 considering all the players are targeting the Western Empire specifically. But the fact that the Romans win after a time limit means you only have to try to survive as Romans, not conquer the other 6 players. And the Romans have much larger economies at the start, so they get a chance to build up some defenses and slightly out-tech the barbarians. I've been meaning to update it for a while, and I had a big list of ideas, so I finally gave it a bit of focus and overhauled it, as well as I made a single player version that you can play against the computer now. I've tried it with real players a bunch of times as Romans and barbarians online recently, and I think it's been a pretty big step forward. It's up on the Steam Workshop now, but let's take a look at the changes. The first big change is Rome is now players 1 and 2 instead of 2 and 6. Just like before, if one of the Romans leaves the game, they automatically transfer all of their buildings and units over to the other, although now it also transfers your resources. Buildings and units can also be transferred between barbarians if one leaves or drops by using a king system by putting your king on the flag of the person that left. Whenever a player leaves, it removes a relic, so it makes you able to access their flag. The time limit has also been adjusted and is a bit sooner at 1 hour and 15 minutes instead of 1 hour and 30. I picked that for a few reasons. One was to have some shorter games with a smaller chance of someone disconnecting, which admittedly is a bit of an issue these days on HD, and I also did it to offset the fact that the Romans can no longer build stone walls, so their main method of delaying is gone. As well, everyone starts in the feudal age now with some more resources and extra villagers. I'm just trying to get the action up a bit quicker, and the first 15 minutes always felt like the same routine build-up. So this just basically cuts out the first 15 minutes of building, and also shortens the end by 15 minutes. There's an exception though, that if the barbarians destroy Constantinople, maybe they misunderstood the instructions and thought it was an objective, I wanted to make that a viable tactic, and the barbarians get an extra 1,000 gold each and add 15 minutes to the time limit if they destroy that wonder. That then brings it back up to the 1 hour and 30 minutes. So the Romans now have to pay attention to Constantinople a bit as well as the cities in the Western Empire. I'm hoping that makes for a bit more choice in tactics for the barbarians and increases the replay value of the whole scenario. Of course, there's still the relatively undefended opening on the eastern side of the red player's territory that the barbarians can go for, and there's some good landing spots around the map for sneaky transport ships. And in some of the really good games I've had, different players are going for different avenues of attack and really hit the Romans on all sides at once. I like to encourage that aspect of it since I think that's probably a parallel with history, and even though the Romans could have easily defeated any one barbarian faction, there's probably a sense of feeling invaded from every angle at once, and it became a matter of trying to prioritize and put out the big fires while letting the small ones go. And I think that accurately describes what happens in the scenario if the barbarians are coordinating well. There's also still a castle age limit for all players except for the Eastern Roman Empire, which can go imperial but is lacking quite a few techs and units. Barbarians now have knights enabled as well, but petards are now disabled and demo ships are still disabled. It's not that I had an issue with how petards were used, and it was a nice way to blitz through at the end of the game, but the whole gunpowder thing felt pretty inauthentic when we're really talking about the 300s and 400s time period here. The game feels a bit different now that I took out stone walls from the Romans, and it was just too hard for barbarians to break through stone walls in Castle Age, and there's a lot of choke points across the rivers into Rome, and stone walls turn the game into a slow grind instead of keeping the action up, which is something I'm really trying to do. Before, it was possible to get to a point with castles and stone walls that you were just waiting out the last 10 minutes of the game without anything you had to do. Keeping the focus on units instead of stone walls means the Romans have to keep doing stuff to hang on, and don't usually get a chance to relax or feel completely safe. For those wondering, the population limit is still 200 for all players, so theoretically the Romans can be outnumbered by about 3 to 1. Another change is that the city of Rome itself now has a triumphal arch as the wonder, regardless of what civilization you pick, and I think it looks a lot better. If either the wonder in Rome or Constantinople is destroyed, the Barbarians get an extra 1,000 gold, though I've added more resources, changed starting locations a bit, and also opened up some more building area, so the Barbarians in general shouldn't have as much trouble finding space and resources to mine as they probably did in the first version. And that was a conscious choice so that you could spend more time fighting and less time trying to find space to build. I'm aiming for the Romans to lose at least one town in every game and to have a lot of close games that really come down to the wire, but that's a tough balance to hit. That should happen most of the time now that stone walls are gone, and it really increases the importance of castles and towers on guarding the town centers. As a piece of advice to all Roman players, you should really have at least one castle and palisade wall around each town center by 30 minutes in the game so they don't get blitzed by a navy or a surprise attack. A couple of other little adjustments to mention: almost all of the Roman villagers now auto-task to work at the start, but I left one idle villager at each resource area, so you get a brief tour of your empire by using the idle villager button. As well, the Romans no longer take attrition damage of 20 HP every 20 seconds while they're in barbarian territory, because repeating triggers meant more lag. I also disabled the building of siege workshops for the Eastern Romans. That at least prevents them from being able to mass siege, which was pretty unstoppable in early versions, and also gives another incentive to defend their capital area. The map was also tweaked a bit as well to give fewer animals, which means less lag. In fact, there's no deer now and just a few boar and way fewer fish. Big map sizes and animals increase lag on any map, so that's something I'm being conscious about trying to keep down. As a big announcement, I know lots of people were asking, and I've made a single player version as the Roman Empire now. There's no time limit on it, and it's just a straight up 2 vs 6 against the Barbarians, or if you delete this outpost in the corner of the map, you get control of the entire empire, though you don't inherit the ability to go Imperial Age. At the moment, HD is a little bit buggy, and if you try to play as a different player in the scenario, it still always puts you as player 1, which is something it didn't used to do, and you used to be able to pick whichever one you wanted, and hopefully that'll come back at some point. As for civilizations and teams, player 1 and 2 are the Romans, so they should be on a team. Player 2 only really makes sense as the Byzantines, and in fact all other unique units are disabled for them, so they kind of have to go with that. Player 1, I recommend Teutons because their unique unit is a lot like a Legionnaire, but Byzantines is okay for me too. It was made for HD, but I believe you should be able to play it in the expansions as well, probably with a few extra bugs since I made it with regular HD in mind. For the Barbarian players 3 to 8, they should be allied and play as either Huns or Goths, though if people want to play as Franks or Vikings, that's cool too. Overall, I'd say it was a major overhaul, and I've been tinkering with it for a long time. If the changes are making you nervous and you prefer the old version, that'll still be up on the workshop along with the blank map. This is just the more accelerated version, and even if it sounds complicated, I think it's going to be more intuitive for first timers, like giving Barbarians knights again, but at the same time also increasing the number of potential strategies, like giving the Barbarians gold and increasing the time limit when Constantinople is destroyed. So try it out. I imagine it'll be going through a few balance and bug tweaks for the next little bit. I don't currently have a plan for another overhaul of it and a version 3, but you never know. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.